Next, we want to think about making our message as memorable as possible. Now, your audience is bombarded with information constantly. So anything that you can do to help your message stand out from all of the noise, to get noticed and be remembered as well, will be well worth the effort. Now, if you remember an acronym called BRAIL, this is a really good rule of thumb for how to make things memorable. So, beginning, people tend to remember things that happen right at the start, and they also remember things that come in right at the end as well. So kind of first thing and the last thing, that's where you want to drop your most important points, is at the beginning and the end of your communication. That's why people talk about, their call to action at the start, but also they conclude and sum up at the end, to kind of bring it all together. Repetition is so helpful because of all that information that is bombarding people, it's very easy to miss something that you've said. So if you want it to stand out, say it a few times. Now, that could be by, for example, saying your call to action at the beginning, and then for anybody that didn't hear it, reiterate it halfway through, and then again remind them at the end. So we call it the tell, where you tell somebody what you're going to do, then you tell them, and then you tell them what you just did, or you tell them what you just said. Another thing is the accentuation. So anything where you add emotion or any kind of physical or tonal kind of marking to, illustrate something, to draw attention to it. So it could be that if you're in a conversation and you're about to say something you want them to remember, you could pick up your own pen, which sends a signal to the other person's subconscious mind that something noteworthy is about to be said. It could be that you open your notebook at a particular point. And if you really want them to remember something, then often an anecdote at that point that demonstrates what it is you're trying to say, or helps them remember what you're trying to say, will help them remember it. So from my point of view, I learned that lesson really well, that accentuating your message, making it stand out, really helpful. Many years ago, 17 years ago, when I started as a self-employed coach, I went to my first networking meeting, and I'd never been to one before, didn't know you stood up and talked about yourself. I was a guest, so I didn't think I'd have to do that. I thought I was just there for, beans on toast and some conversations. And obviously people started talking when everybody sat down for breakfast, and people got up and talked, and then they got around to me, and I thought, well, I'm not going to speak. I'm just a guest. And they said, go on, it's your turn. And I panicked because I hadn't got anything prepared. But obviously I didn't want to say no. So I stood up so fast and I hit my head on a beam above where I was sitting that I hadn't noticed. And of course, everybody saw that I'd done it. And I tried to style it out. And I walked round to the front of the room, and I was so kind of concussed and confused and bamboozled. And I was trying to think of how to explain what I did. I'd never really had to do it before. And I started mumbling something about, I thought, just tell them what's the last client I had. And it was somebody with an issue with intimacy. I just mumbled something about relationships, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I just mumbled it, got to the end and sat down again. As soon as everybody had finished, I raced to the door and went home. I was so embarrassed. Weeks later, maybe even months, I was at another networking event. I'd rallied and tried again. And somebody was talking to me, and one of the ladies on my table said, oh God, I hate those networking events. I always feel like I've done a really bad job. And this lovely lady said, well, it can't be as bad as what happened to a woman at my husband's networking event. This poor girl, she said, she stood up and hit her head on a beam, and then had to sort of talk about her business or whatever. And I had to admit, I said, oh God, I think that was me. And she says, oh my God, but they said you ran off at the end. And I said, yeah, because I was humiliated. I was so embarrassed. And they said, oh my God, they said, everybody wanted your business card because they'd stopped eating, they paid attention, but they couldn't find you at the end. And because you'd obviously talked about a subject that was quite titillating and, interesting, they'd all paid attention. They were all wanted to talk to you. So she said you shouldn't have run off. So in terms of accentuation, obviously there's no such thing as bad publicity, but it really does work in terms of getting attention. So trying to find a good way, trying to find a positive way to accentuate something can really help. Another thing that can really help people remember something is link it to something that they already know, something they like. So using examples or analogies that are of things that they actually enjoy can help them remember. So when things are linked into categories, into groups, people can find that much more enjoyable. So linking things, for example, if you want people to remember your name, a nice little way to do that is always to say, my name's James, as in James and the Giant Peach, or my name's Jessica, as in Jessica Fletcher. And that little extra link to something they might have already heard of helps them remember you. The next is to make your message clear. Now, given our different perspectives and the fact that we can all put our own meaning on just about everything somebody says based on our generalizations, our map of the world, our beliefs and values and so on, it can be really helpful to go over and over how clear you think your message actually is. So to demonstrate this, look at how many different connotations there are from just this one sentence. I never said he stole the money. 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 So even just a simple sentence, depending on where the inflection is, where the intonation, people can hear different things. So you want to be utterly crystal clear about what it is you're actually saying. And that's when you can go back and do the repetition, the accentuation, to help people to really understand what it is that you are trying to say. Now, imagine another example where you give out a message and you say, hey, everybody, you'll all be pleased to know that very soon we'll be streamlining our store operations and job descriptions in order that we become more efficient and create more profits. Thank you very much. Any questions? Now, the moment that you've said a message like that, there are going to be questions. But the interpretations of what people will think you've just said will be so infinite, and people will hear words like streamlining and job descriptions, and ultimately they will think, well, that's it, we're all getting made redundant, and they'll start to panic. So you don't want people to jump to conclusions about what you mean, and if you think they might do, you want to make sure that you have a big question and answer session where the kinds of questions that you get will indicate whether people have got the wrong end of the stick or not. And it is highly possible when you have an emotionally charged situation that people will get the wrong end of the stick, or they will panic, or they will have these kind of foregone conclusions about what you mean. And a lot of that's going to come down to the rapport they already have with you, with the organization, and past experiences that you've had together. Finally, you want to think about making your communication engaging. So the more senses that you can stimulate, the more engaged somebody will be. So the one that's hardwired is storytelling. And this can be used in conversation as well as presentations or any kind of communication. Stories are so helpful. They're kind of embedded into our psychology. Participation is really important, letting people actually get engaged with the information, asking questions throughout, speaking, if it's a group, speaking to each other in a meeting. Any kind of participation will help. Ensuring people's needs are met. So when people feel safe, they'll engage. When people feel liked and connected, they'll engage. When they feel important, they'll engage. So at the beginning of some of my online trainings, where I'm meeting large numbers of people that I have never met before, quite often, if I don't do something, people won't want to participate because they're a little bit afraid of, all these people they don't know either. And so finding ways to make it a safe space and perhaps break them up into smaller groups so that they can start chatting to each other on a very small basis. And then little by little, they start realizing, actually, everyone here seemed fine. And at least the 3 people that they met were nice. And then they will assume that everybody else is going to be as nice, that it's a safe space, they're having fun. And then they'll start to participate a little bit more. Mentioning people's names. This is so important. If you want people to feel important, remember things about them, their name being the most important one. On a one-to-one basis, remember what they told you last time, that their kid went to the dentist, or that their dog was at the vet's. Try and remember things that matter to that person, because it then engages them in what you've got to say, engages them in you and your relationship with them. Any kind of stimulation of senses is really helpful. So not everybody learns through auditory or visual. Some people do need to practice something. Some people do need to have a bunch of statistics and facts before they get interested. Everybody is completely different. So do your best to find a way to engage the senses of that individual. And also have fun. It is so okay to be playful. It's so okay to have fun and to enjoy your relationships and enjoy your communications, enjoy your interactions. Now, storytelling is one of those one-size-fits-all ways to communicate, because actually, when you tell a story, obviously you can include kind of participation. You can people do feel like they're participating when you tell a story. People do feel, especially if the emotion in the story is playful and fun, they can relate to the characters in the story and what you're saying. But oxytocin is released when we tell stories. Mirror neurons are activated, which are vital for building rapport. There's a literal neural coupling between the teller and the listener, like hypnosis. And it helps to connect the left and the right side of brain, helping to integrate information, and evoking emotions heightens our ability to remember. So all of these things combined just help somebody engage with you, looks forward to your communication, looks forward to interactions with you. And then whatever message it is that you are sharing is more likely to be well received.